Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 250 of CryptoBiography. Yep, a quarter of the way to 1,000. Wow. And we are on part 16 of the Isle of Bronze. And when we last left, we had two very familiar chests show up. And back in the palace. So here we go. Nasramin turned to Mercili. What happened to the two chests that Callis brought with her to give to us? Did we keep them? Mercili shook his head. No. When she left, some of the parting gifts we gave her were placed in those chests. They should be in Thebes. Then the Assyrians got hold of them somewhere, Nasramin reasoned. And since their ambassadors aren't waiting alongside their message, this can't be good. They must have found out about these specific chests and what they mean. We should find out, Moaya said. Shall I open them, my king? Mercili asked. I suppose they could be trapped. I doubt they would do it that way, Nasramin said. He strode over and pulled open one of the chests. There was a corpse inside. Epi, Nasramin said, but the name stuck in his throat. Mercili had followed him to the chests and looked in. Yes, our ambassador to Thebes. Nasramin looked at the second chest with something like loathing. What else have they sent? He pulled the second one open. Inside was the corpse of Queen Callis, her face purple almost to the point of being black. Nasramin realized that he was baring his teeth in a face that was part anger, part disgust. He forced himself to relax. They want us afraid. This is a threat. They will attack. Mercili and Moaya nodded. And I'll bet they're already on the way. They won't want us too prepared. Mercili, is there anything more we can do to finish the improvements to our defenses faster? Mercili, ever the one willing to try, said, I swear I will find ways to get them done sooner. Then I leave that in your hands. Moaya and I must go see Theodora and tell her the awful news. Have your men take out the bodies and start preparing them for burial with all honor and respect. Personally see to it that everything in those chests is examined for any further messages or clues from the Assyrians. I suspect the bodies are the only messages they needed to send, but if there is any other clue, we need to know. It will be done, Mercili said. Nasramin put his hand on his general's shoulder. Thank you, my friend. He helped Moaya into her chair, and they went to Theodora's guest room. They didn't stand on ceremony, but knocked themselves. Who is it? Theodora asked from inside. Moaya and Nasramin, Moaya answered her. There was a muffled gasp from inside the room. They heard steps, then Theodora opened her door. May we come in? Nasramin asked. She let them in. Hama was there as well. Both of the young women were looking at them in a shocked way. Nasramin saw no reason to wait. Theodora, the Assyrians have killed your mother. Theodora was shocked. Whatever she was expecting, it wasn't that. Finally she spoke. How do you know? She left the island. The Assyrians sent us her body. I am sorry. Hama embraced Theodora. Moaya got out of her chair and went over to her and put her arm over her shoulder. Theodora was crying in great sobs, and Nasramin realized he did not know what to do next. He decided to simply give her the rest of the information. Your mother's body is being treated with all honor. If you wish to see her, we will bring you to her. Meanwhile, however, we think that the Assyrians are coming to attack. We think her death and the sending of her body was a message that they are coming. We will do everything we can to protect you, but as the Assyrians have iron weapons and armor, and by all accounts a large number of soldiers, we may be able to smuggle you off of Limos before that happens. Theodora simply nodded her understanding and held on to Hama. Moaya straightened up and made her way back to her chair, and Nasramin knew that she was signaling it was time to leave Theodora alone with Hama. He brought Moaya back to their chambers. He helped her get into bed, but he knew sleep would not come with him for a long time. He took a walk in his garden alone. The cool night air felt good against his face. He took it deep into his chest, feeling his body relax with the sensation. When he felt that he could cool no more, he went back inside and slipped into bed next to his wife, and despite everything, he fell asleep almost immediately. The next several days were filled with activity. Mersili was doing everything he could to speed up the improvements to Limus's defenses. Nasramin gave him all the assistance he could, mainly by having various artisans and skilled workers brought in and paid to speed the work. Their improvements were coming at an astonishing speed. The bronze gate itself was hardly recognizable. Before, it was impressive due to its size alone. Now it had multiple ways for men to stand atop it and either drop deadly items on attackers below or catch any rams they might have brought up to the gate. And any attackers would also have trouble even getting there with the entirety of the cliff wall above the path now made accessible to the defenders to fire arrows and drop rocks. Linus held a major banquet in the god's honor, which lasted an entire day. Nasramin was there, of course, and even managed to hide his usual doubts. Linus seemed reasonably satisfied with him that day. Asasi was by Linus's side almost all that day, and though Nasramin did not like the idea of his son being so close to their head priest, he could not find an excuse to prevent it. At least, he thought, that might keep him more or less out of trouble in the short term. One morning, the warning gongs rang out. Nasramin heard them and was already awake and dressed before anyone could come to tell him what they meant. He was making sure that Mawaya's helpers were by her side when Mersili and his guards came in. "I heard them. What do you know?" "A large fleet has been spotted. Assyrians." Nasramin nodded. "Take me to the overlook." There was a part of the top of the hill above the protection of the bronze gate, but not actually near any possible enemies. It had the advantage of overlooking the harbor and around nearly half of their small island. There was a smallish watchtower built there, a simple wooden one, as it was not made to be defended, but simply to get the best possible vantage. As he got to the top and looked out over the sea, his heart sank. There were hundreds of ships, all heading towards them. It looked like a group of ants marching on a carcass to devour it. The Assyrians had arrived. Mersili struck the gong several times, giving the signal that all healthy bodies were to prepare for battle. As the ships came towards the mouth of the harbor, the new, larger towers fired their heavy bolts, smeared with pitch and set aflame. Some hit, and in places smoke started to rise. The new large catapults were then in range, and fire shot and stones rained down. A couple of the Assyrian ships lost their sails and stopped advancing. "That's the idea. We slow them down, and then we hope we sink enough of them in the mouth of the bay to block their passage." "There are so many," Nasramin said. "Yes," Mersili said. "We will do all we can." "As will I," Nasramin said. He returned to his chambers. On the way, he called to his helpers to bring him his armor. They did so, and helped get him prepared for battle. Mawaya looked on, her face impassive. He could tell what she was holding back. He was ready, and before they put on his helmet, he went over and knelt before Mawaya. "Kiss me, my love," he said. "I do not know if we will survive the day. You have my permission to take Hama and Theodora and flee if you can, and if you will. Anything you think can help you, take it. And in the meantime, kiss me once more." She kissed him, throwing her arm around his neck and fiercely pressing her mouth to his. "My love, my king," she whispered. Moments later, he was striding the halls of the palace. "Where's Shugo?" he asked one of his aides. "Being put in his armor. He should join us any time." And indeed, even as they strode down the hall, Shugo came around, resplendent in his bronze armor. "Come, son," he called. Shugo fell in step behind him. They went out to the bronze gate. Word must have been sent to Mersili, because he arrived almost when they did. "The ships are being destroyed in the harbor mouth, but it is not enough," Mersili said. "There are so many of them. They are pushing through. Some are even landing outside the bay and slowly scaling the cliffs. I believe they will be making their way up here any time." And he was right, for there were now sounds of fighting coming from below. The cliff was positively lined with their men, some with bows, others with stones. The ones he could see that were further down were already attacking their enemy. Painful screams were making their way up, but the yells of the enemy were nevertheless seeming to get closer. This was confirmed by the sight of their men atop the cliff, nearer to them, starting to take aim and fire their various missiles. When they came around the corner, it was not a group of standard soldiers. It was a ram, covered with green hides and water to protect from fire, with wheels. There were, it seemed, dozens of men inside, pushing it up the hill. The obstacles to the path itself were slowing them, but not stopping them. The arrows and even the rocks were having little effect. There were large cauldrons of hot water ready at the bronze gate. The men there crouched, for behind the ram were archers doing their best to pick off any targets they could see. They were hitting little, but it was the ram that was the real threat. It kept inching forward, and finally it was in place. They had not been able to stop it. The ram was tipped with an iron cap pointed. There was no other decoration. The iron was the entire point of this attack, showing off their iron and destroying them as revenge for their daring to help Thebes was the whole point. The ram did not swing for a couple of minutes, and it felt strange. Then Nasramin realized that the men under the ram's roof would be setting down stakes, so the ram would not simply roll back when it hit the gate. The Limanites were rolling down the mesh, but he did not think the mesh would stop such a ram. They were also pouring down the boiling water. There were some yells of pain from the ram, but the roof was doing its job well. Nasramin had an arrow fly by his ear, and he ducked back down. He could be of no more use atop the gate. He was only a spectator there. And that's the end of the episode this week. Thank you for listening. If you have any comments and questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2022, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.